And welcome back to page 3. We have to graph the linear equation by finding and plotting its intercepts. They are very specific about the intercepts, so that means we have to make sure that we actually find the intercepts. Lack of finding the intercepts means I can't count this problem right for you, so please make sure you find it accurately. An intercept is where it crosses the x or y axis. So in order for me to find my intercepts, I need to plug a 0 in for x, and then on a different one plug a 0 in for y. When I plug a 0 in for x, that means I'm actually finding the y-intercept. When I plug a 0 in for y, I'm actually finding the x-intercept. You need to know the difference between the two because they're going to ask very specifically on the test which one is which. So for this one, I'm going to actually find my x-intercept first by plugging a 0 in for y. So I'm going to say y equals 0 so I can keep up with my information. 9 times 0 minus 3x plus 6 is equal to 0. 9 times 0 is just going to be 0, so I don't need to write that part anymore. It's like it goes away. That gives me negative 3x plus 6 is equal to 0. Subtract 6 from both sides. Negative 3x is equal to negative 6. Divide both sides by negative 3, and you get that x is equal to 2. Now that I know that x is 2 and y is 0, that makes my x-intercept equal to 2, 0. Not just 2, the point 2, 0. An intercept is a point. Make sure you write the point 2, 0. I'm not trying to be super nitpicky. I'm trying to make sure you actually get it correct. I have to be nitpicky when I grade the papers. So, when I'm finding the y-intercept, I need to make sure I plug x in for 0. So that means I'm going to have 9y, starting back over, minus 3 times 0 plus 6 is equal to 0. Once again, the 3 times 0 is just going to go away because 3 times 0 is 0. That gives me 9y plus 6 is equal to 0. Move my 6 to the other side. 9y is equal to negative 6. Divide both sides by 9. You get that y is equal to negative 2 over 3. Yes, it may be a fraction. It may not be a fraction. We don't know which one it's going to be because we don't know what form you're going to end up with. So that means that our y-intercept is going to be 0, because that's what our x value was, negative 2 over 3. Now it's time for us to actually put these points on the graph. The point 2, 0 is right here, and the point 0, negative 2/3 is a little bit less than 1. It's really hard to tell what it looks like, but that's what it is. And then you sketch the graph. For problem number 8, it's a little more straightforward, only you have some information you have to have memorized for problem number 8. If you need proof that it's true, however, you can always use the XYT chart for problem number 8, where you pick 3 numbers for x, 0, 1, and 2, say, and you look and see what it would make y. Well, when I plug a 0 in for my x, since there is no x, that means my y has to be negative 3. When I plug a 1 in for my x, since there is no x, y must be negative 3. And when I plug a 2 in for my x, since there is no x, y must be negative 3. So that makes it 0, negative 3, 1, negative 3, 2, negative 3. So that must be my line. However, if you've memorized some things, it'll make your life a little bit simpler. You need to memorize that x equals a number is going to be a vertical line, which means it has an undefined slope. If you have y equals some number, in other words, in this one there is no y in your equation, and in this one there is no x in your equation, it has to be a horizontal line, and it has a 0 slope. If you can memorize those two clouds, then you will have a much easier time on this test. Now, I told you in the first page that there were going to be problems on the test. No, there were going to be problems on the review that are not actually on the test. There are actual more problems. I didn't know whether you were going to end up with a y equals kind of equation or an x equals kind of equation, so I had to stick them both up here. So for this one, we have x plus 4 is equal to 0. It's true that there is no y, but we have to solve for x first. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides to get that x is actually equal to negative 4. Now, using the information from up here, we can see that must be a vertical line, which means it has an undefined slope. So I go to where x is negative 4, which is right here, and I draw my vertical line. If we wanted to do it the old-fashioned way, you could do an XYT chart. And it does not matter what numbers you pick for y, you would still have to have negative 4, because that's what it says, for all of your x's, and those points do lie on our line. For problems 10, 11, and 12, you need to make sure that you have memorized this formula. Things are falling. You need to make sure you have memorized this formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We don't give you a formula sheet. You have to already know them by heart. So for problem number 10, it says negative 4 minus negative 4 over negative 3 minus negative 9. Watch your minus and negatives. They'll mess you up. So right here, my minus negative is the same thing as a plus. Just like down here, minus negative is the same thing as a plus. So that gives me negative 4 plus 4 over negative 3 plus 9, which gives me 0 over 6. And 0 over 6 will always be 0. 0 on top means that 0 is your answer. For the next one, we have 8 minus 6 over negative 10 minus negative 10. Another minus and negative. 8 minus 6 is 2. Minus and negative is the same thing as plus, so negative 10 plus 10 gives me a 0 on the bottom. 0 on the bottom is always undefined. So that means we have an undefined slope. And then for the last one, 8 minus 19 over 3 minus 17. 8 minus 19 is negative 11. 3 minus 17 is negative 14. Once again, two negatives cancel each other out and give you 11 over 14 for your answer. Now, a word of caution. A lot of people get to these and they get so excited about things that they've learned in the future or things that they had just mastered in the past about writing the equation out. They didn't ask for an equation here. All they wanted was the slope. Don't give them more than they ask for. They are very specific about what they want, and that means that I have to grade very specifically about what you give us. Okay, thus endeth page 3. In a little bit, we'll go on to page 4.